Thank you. IEC Vice Chairperson, Ms. Janet Love. IEC Commissioner, Judge Daya Pile. Advocate Nthabisen Sipanyamogale, the Chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality. She hasn't joined us as yet, but I'm sure she's coming. I've also noticed that we are graced by honorable members of parliament here today, Honorable Kaukau, and others that I may have not recognized. We are also joined by Mayor Bathabile Dlamini. Mayor, you're welcome. Thanks for gracing the occasion. Leaders of various political parties present here today. I see that we have media representatives that are here to make my life very hard. Student representative bodies. I know that we have here present with us the National RCL Executive. It's nice to have young voices in the room, all delegates and guests. Greetings to Melang, Tobela, Absheni, Ndimachoreni, Lochani, Molweni, Khuemora, Sanbonani, Tumelang. Tumelang. Welcome all to the IEC Celebration of Women event, which is titled Women Championing Democracy, Paving the Way to 2026 Local Government Elections. My name is Naledi Selebano. I work for the Commission for Gender Equality. I wanted to clarify to my chairperson that these colors are also the CGE corporate colors, just in case, just in case she thinks I'm crossing the floor. But she's not here yet, so I'll explain during the tea break. So the CGE is a sister Chapter 9 institution to the IEC, along with others, and I will be your program director for the day. I often say when I'm given an opportunity to facilitate a program that I have the easiest job in the room. Mine is to tell people, sit down, stand up, you can talk, no, you may not. Whereas some of you are here speakers, and all of you need to listen and ask questions, but I have the easiest job of us all. Now, August holds profound significance in South Africa as we take a pause to commemorate the historic 1956 Women's March to the Union Buildings, where thousands of courageous women united in defiance against the oppressive apartheid regime and its discriminatory past laws. This serves as a powerful tribute to the relentless contributions of women in the struggle for freedom and equality in our nation. I thought we would ululate at that. Ooh, that is such a weak ululation. You got to work with me, but is this not Women's Month? And a celebration of women's event? Thank you. Now, as we observe this month, we are given a unique opportunity to celebrate the monumental achievements of women, while also reflecting on the journey that we've undertaken. This month prompts us to consider the progress we've made, as well as to confront the challenges that persist, as we also recommit ourselves to addressing ongoing gender inequalities. This dual focus, which is celebration and introspection, allows us to honor the legacy of those who fought for justice, but also to inspire actionable change going forward. And I must say that we have made quite a considerable number of strides as a nation. For example, our Constitution enshrines gender equality as a fundamental right. And it is also one of the few in the world that includes provisions for reproductive health rights. So that is something noteworthy. I also note here that girls' enrollment in primary and secondary education has improved quite significantly, particularly in urban areas. We also have women's representation at 43% in the upper house of parliament. And this is, we are among the best in the world, although we've seen that decline recently, but we are still at the top there somewhere. It's not all bad. Maternal health has seen significant improvements, with a 34% drop in maternal mortality between 2000 and 2020. And as a country, we've also managed to expand access to HIV treatment for women and girls. So those are some of the strides we've made that are noteworthy and worthy of celebrating. However, even though we know these, we know that challenges still persist. The high levels of gender-based violence and femicide being among them, the burden of unpaid care work on women, the disproportionate burden of poverty on women. And we also note that there are barriers to the economic emancipation of women. So these still need to be addressed, and the list is endless. The challenges, we can go to town listing all of them. And hence I said, it is important that as we celebrate, we also reflect on how far we've come, but also think about the journey that lies ahead. I thought it would be important for me to also note that the World Economic Forum suggests that it will take about 134 years for the world, which also includes South Africa, to cover the gender gap that exists. That sounds gloomy, but all of us are here in the room. Honorable Kaukau. Am I protected, Vice Chair? So this is a gloomy picture, but all of us are here, and we know that together we can forge a better South Africa forward. Without any further ado, we have a list of speakers. They are here to unpack all of this for us. Like I said, my role is just to stay, stand up, sit down. So we have all of these wonderful speakers who will come through and unpack what all of this means for us. Without wasting any further time, let me invite to the stage the IEC Vice Chairperson, Commissioner Janet Love, to come through and deliver the keynote. Over to you.
Good morning to all of you. There's been a wonderful introduction given to us by Naledi, and as part of that introduction, she's observed a lot of protocol, and I don't intend to even try and emulate her because I won't succeed to do it as well. But really thank you all for being here, and a very hearty welcome on behalf of the Electoral Commission. We have decided as the Electoral Commission to celebrate women, to celebrate not just, as you've heard, the achievements, but to celebrate women as the potential that we all represent. And part of that celebration, the decision to hold that celebration here, was to remind us, not really to remind us of the past, but to remind us of what it means to be a woman who stands up. And that's what this place actually represents. Here we have various exhibitions, we have various names that are written all around the museum that it has now become. But it's people, some of them unfortunately have passed, but some of them are still alive. And I think without fear of any correction, I can say that all the women who were incarcerated in the women's jail were women who had huge difficulties that they had to face in their lives, not just the difficulty of apartheid and being in jail, but they had to face difficulties that young women face today, difficulties of a lack of access to education, difficulties of exclusion from opportunities and participation, difficulties of not having employment and having huge burdens of family responsibility. But all of those women were able to celebrate women and celebrate themselves and actually stand up and do what needs to be done. And I think if those women had heard, that it was going to take, I don't know what we heard now, 165 years or whatever it is, for a gap to be covered. I don't think that that would have done anything more than been water off a duck's back. Because for those women, it wasn't about looking that something is going to be achieved in many generations, in many decades. It's about what can I do? What is it possible for me to contribute? And I think that that's what an election is all about. An election is about saying to all the women of this country, you have the potential. You have the potential to lead. You have the potential to create the possibility for change. Become candidates. Whether you become candidates because you are going to be independent candidates or you're part of organizations, stand up, be counted. It's a time when we say to young women of this country, make sure that you are registered in the place where you live, because it's in that place that you and everybody around you can make a difference, can choose people who you can then follow, you can track, you can hold to account. I think that's what all the women whose names you see around this prison as part of this museum are saying. We are privileged to have our RCL learners present, and the IEC has had the great privilege of being able to work very, very closely with the whole process of ensuring that the national RCL could be convened for the first time in this province. And it's a real tribute to the department, but to the schools, that this process has been doggedly pursued and is still going on and growing in leaps and bounds and becoming stronger. And we say to you, young learners, we know that you have stood up, and we salute you. Standing up in a school to be a leader is no easier than standing up to be a leader in your community. And the fact that you have stood up, we hope is going to lay the basis for you to stand up in every single way you can in the future. We hope that you will continue to work with us to ensure that those many young girls that have stayed on, that haven't had to leave school before their final years of 16 to 18, we hope you'll work with us to make sure that all of the learners are registered. And we hope to vote. And we hope that you'll also point us to how we reach your friends who have decided to leave school or have had to leave school before that matric year and who don't yet have their IDs. How we can help them to not only get their IDs, but in order also to ensure that they register to vote. And then we need to be saying to all of the women of this country, if you look at the statistics, we can be reminded of them. I think many of us are aware that the majority of women who are in this country are eligible to register to vote. The majority of people who have registered are women, and the majority of people who participate in elections are women. Sadly, the majority of people who occupy leading positions and elected positions are not women. And there's a disjuncture there. But part of that disjuncture is also because we need to remember that women still, as you've heard, bear many of the burdens in our society that are burdens that have come from generation after generation, but are also burdens of our own inability to deal with ensuring that we actually overcome the legacy of discrimination of our past. There is still very, very much to do. Now, elections offer one opportunity, having the right people in positions of authority over how things are governed is a very, very important part. But you all know that we've had women who have been elected into position, and not all of them have performed as they were supposed to. We have to, as women of this country, know that our casting of a vote is not our surrender of our power. Our casting of a vote is to give a mandate to people who have made promises. We have to track those promises. We have to track their implementation. But most importantly, we have to remember that the buck doesn't stop with them alone. We've still got communities that need attention. We've still got people who are unemployed within our communities who need support. We've still got young people in the community who need to be assisted to be able to access things like libraries. We still need to ensure that the libraries within our communities are functional. These are things that we can do on a daily basis. When we see people littering, it's a very elementary thing. We need to take pride. Who's going to pick up the litter otherwise? You know, we talk about the dignity of people in our communities, and we only have to look at the denominator of rubbish and trash to know that there is a lot that needs to be done in terms of local authority governance. That's the low-hanging fruit. But for us as citizens, we also have a responsibility that is no less. It's no less when the leaders of our country don't perform as they should. Our responsibility still remains. So as we celebrate women, celebrate the capacity, the power, and the potential of women, we know that women have championed democracy. We know that women have paved the way. And we also know that we have a huge responsibility, not only to those women who are honored here in this museum, but we have a huge responsibility to ourselves, to the young learners who are going to be joining the ranks of those people who will be taking up positions in society, but also to even younger children. Those are the people to whom we owe responsibility. Since we are talking about the Electoral Commission, I want to pay a special tribute to an organization that was not easy to build. It's an organization that has developed over the years since 1999, when the current Electoral Commission was established. It has developed and stood proud on very important shoulders, shoulders like Brigalia Bam, who set a situation in place where within our organization we've been able to grow a really important professional capacity. But we've also been able to retain staff and because of that grow our own timber. And our timber is strong. Here in this room, I want to celebrate the fact that we have we have our provincial electoral officers from the majority of provinces who have led the majority of provinces as our POs with a strength and determination, and they too are growing timber in those provinces. I want to celebrate you. I want to celebrate your strength. I want to celebrate, if you can all stand up, all our POs. Here's one of them. There she is. These are women who over the years, thank you for everything that you've done, have not only performed as very, very professional electoral officers in their provinces, they've all come up through the ranks. And what they've done is they've stood firm in the face not just of huge challenges, but in the face of a lot of pressure from ordinary voters, but also from politicians. They've had to stand firm and make the organization that we are part of and that we are also celebrating be the professional, impartial, and fair organization that delivers elections of world quality. And I'm saying to all of you, you need, I think, to cherish those elements of our constitutional state that are standing firm, that are defending our democracy, and you need to ensure that they are not hollowed out. You need to ensure that these are organizations that we take pride in, that when we're having an election and we are calling for professional people, young people, to come forward and to put their names down to be part of our electoral staff, you assist us in getting those young people who have the necessary knowledge and experience, as well as those who are maybe wanting some work experience for the first time, to run our voting stations with the kind of professionalism that is a tribute to the sort of election that we are intent on running. We also want to use this occasion to remind us of the fact that we talk about August as being the month that is the month of celebrating the potential of women. I hope that we are very conscious of the fact that we should be celebrating women throughout the year, all the time. But the reason that we select August as a month to pay tribute, really, more than to celebrate only the potential, is because there are women who, as you heard from Naledi when she opened this day, you heard there are women who led that march against the toughest kind of resistance, against the toughest kind of oppression, against huge brutality. And most of those women are no longer, but they are mentioned here on these walls, including people like Albertina Sisulu, including people like Helen Joseph, and so on. These are people who led that march, but we are lucky that we still have stalwarts amongst us who are alive, in particular Sophie de Bruyn. But we also have to remind ourselves of the kinds of people who are in our consciousness, in our minds when we are here. They are people who are rural women, who were part of the struggle against apartheid, but who worked within their communities. There are people who are women who come from the townships, who worked within the township communities, building organization, building resistance. And so when I call on you to all ensure that we renew our commitment to our democracy by getting our communities to register, by getting our leaders to stand up and be candidates, by ensuring people come out to vote, I'm also calling upon you to mobilize every single person within our community to be an activist, to be a committed person who celebrates not only her own potential, but the potential of our society as a whole. I thank you.
I think we can do better than that. If I wasn't already standing, I would stand and give you a standing ovation. That was so inspiring, Commissioner. And what I love about your reflections is that you touch on the challenges of women in their diversity, as young people, as poor people, as leaders, and so forth. That was so inspiring. I loved when you mentioned having the right people in authority. That is quite key for us, especially now that we are headed to the next election. You reminded us of our civic responsibilities or civic duties as citizens. And I love when you addressed the issue of voter apathy among young people. I always say the so-called voter apathy among young people, because sometimes when we listen to their voices around why they're not turning up, those reasons sound so legitimate. It's not that they are choosing to just abstain, that they don't care at all. Sometimes it's because they care that much, and that's why they stay at home. But that was really, really inspiring. Okay, we are now moving into the panel discussion. But before we do that, if I don't do this, the IEC will never invite me again. I can see the colleague is looking at me like, I hope you remember. Earlier when I was doing the protocols, there's quite a few individuals that I left out. It wasn't on purpose. I hadn't yet seen everybody that's here. However, I'd like to take the opportunity to also acknowledge the chairperson of the NYDA, Dr. Sunshine Miende. I hope that is correct. Thank you. I note that today also with us, we have the IEC provincial electoral officers from Limpopo, from Mpumalanga, from the Eastern Cape, and there's one with us on stage that I've already met. Now all protocols duly observed. Northwest is here as well. Okay, you are acknowledged. We are now moving into the panel discussion. I'd like to invite you, Dr. Rabele, to join us. I don't mind standing, to just do it all at once. So I'm also the moderator. I see you owe me. I'll send the bill through once we are done. Thank you so much. We do have a change, and I will indicate when I get to that. So these are the ladies, the women who are forming part of the panel this morning. I will introduce them. Please just wave so that everybody can locate you where you are. First up, I almost announced myself because I'm appearing on the panel as well as the facilitator. We have from the Institute of Global Dialogue, Ms. Sanusha Naidu. Please wave to the people. She will be giving us a global overview of the role of women in politics and electoral trends. And again, we have the IEC KZN head. We also agreed on that title. I didn't want to get my tongue twisted. So she said, I give you permission, just say it this way. Ms. Ntomfuthi Masinga, and she will be giving us her perspective around championing democracy at the IEC. And then, unfortunately, we do not have Ms. Nombulelo Tria. She's not here. I know you saw on the program her name is reflected, but she's not joining us today. However, we do have Dr. Ditlhare Rabele, and she will be talking to us about gender and governance in local government. So to kickstart this discussion, I'll give each and every single one of us in the panel. The first one may be lucky because I still need to put in my PIN and locate the timer. But I'm going to give all of us 3 minutes to start our opening statements. And then from there, we'll then get into the gist of the discussions. Over to you, Sanusha.
Thank you very much, moderator, chairperson. Again, let me just say that not to belabor the point, but all protocols observed. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. And with the other hat I wear in foreign policy, it's always all protocols observed. Again, let me thank the IEC, thank the opening remarks made by Ms. Love and of course the issue. As I was listening to these remarks and the way you framed the discussion today, I actually threw everything I put down as notes out, because I think we kind of going in circles if you keep repeating. And I think there's two things I want to say as my opening remarks. We talk about women in politics, but we also need to talk about women in activism. And we need to juxtapose those two issues, because women in politics, it doesn't just emerge, it emerges from a particular ecosystem. And that ecosystem comes from how women play a role in their communities. And even in the context of their household, they're always in a state of activism. They're always trying to make sure that their structural conditions, the structural barriers, as well as the dimensions around which their empowerment is defined, is constantly in a state of making sure that they have agency. And I think that's what happens globally. We have societies today where the role of women in society, in politics, and more importantly, in the context of agency, has to now become much more embedded, because some of the rights of women's rights movements globally is declining. If we think of modern societies where we see representation juxtaposed between the challenges around women's rights, look at the rights of abortion, the rights of the ability to control your own, have the right over your own body. Those are being defined by those in positions of authority and taken away from women to make those decisions. And I think when we look at young people today globally, there is a fundamental interest or a fundamental shift. Young people today, especially women, are saying, not in our name. And not in our name means we will decide our future, our empowerment, but more importantly, our agency. And the activism of that is where they define their politics. So climate change justice activists, trade justice activists, people that are fighting for their voice to be heard. And that's the agency around the global phenomenon of women in politics, but defined by women through activism. Thank you.
So we'll take the first segment because they're feeling for me that I can't be standing on my heels, so that I need to sit down. And then we'll talk to you later, Dr. Rabel, if that's okay with you.
Go back to my
You
chair.
need to go back. I apologize for that.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks for the opportunity. I like what Sanisha said when he started, that organizations are a microcosm of what happens in the broader society. And the society that we come from, we know exactly what the societal norms look like in different spaces where we find ourselves. Now, as the Electoral Commission, we are one of the 6 Chapter 9 institutions that are tasked with entrenching constitutional democracy in this country. And our niche as the Electoral Commission is about electoral democracy. Now, the disclaimer that we always put when we talk about issues of gender equity is that we can talk about ourselves as the Electoral Commission, but we can't talk about our friends, the political parties, because we are very clear that we cannot meddle in the internal affairs of political parties. We have a legal framework in this country that is largely persuasive in nature, which says parties must strive to maintain gender equity in its membership, in its structures of authority. But as the Electoral Commission, we actually can't prescribe to political parties what they can do. But as an institution, I like what Commissioner Love said at the beginning, in that we rest on the shoulders of people that have paved the way in the Electoral Commission. And we are not too big on numbers. Whilst we are doing good, 9 of the provincial electoral officers are women. The majority of women in the of middle management in the IEC is women. But we are not advocate for numbers. Numbers do not translate into a conducive environment for women to thrive in any environment. So I don't want us to focus on numbers. I want to focus on the lived experiences of women who find themselves in leadership positions in all our institutions, because, like it or not, institutions are the same. We are a reflection of the society that we come from. So the key thing for us as the Electoral Commission is that whilst we are tasked with entrenching constitutional democracy in the country, our broader civic education program as the Electoral Commission talks to the broader society wherever we find ourselves. We encourage people not to only participate as voters, particularly the previously historically disadvantaged groupings in our society, your black population, the women, people living with disabilities. For us as the Electoral Commission, it becomes key to say what then becomes a lived experience of previously disadvantaged groups in our society. Younger people that are coming up in the institution look up to women that are occupying leadership positions in the Electoral Commission. How do we make it look like to those young people that are up and coming? Do they look at us and see that it is possible to do this? And what is it that we are doing? What we're going to be talking about today is what is a lived experience of women in leadership positions within the Electoral Commission. Thank you very much.
So we have more than one mic. I think those were powerful opening remarks. Sanusha talking about the strength of activism among women. I think we've seen the strength of that. We've seen with the Me Too's movements. We've seen with the total shutdown movements, wherein young people, young women in particular, take center stage and say not in our name, like you said. I think that was a powerful opening. Now, you mentioned that numbers may not necessarily matter that much, which is what I'd like for us to get into, Sanusha. There are quite a number of arguments that are often brought forward around why women's representation is key in political leadership. You look at the justice argument that says the majority of the population are anyway women, so why must they not be equally represented at the top? There is the experience argument that says our experiences differ. Our experiences are naturally gendered and therefore differ. There's the interest argument that men and women and other gender diverse groups may have different interests and that all of those should be represented, right? The symbolic argument that speaks about when women see others in these spaces of leadership, they get inspired to also, come in as well. But here's one that I'd like for us to talk about. I think it's the critical mass. The critical mass that speaks about women being able to make a greater impact when they are represented at certain levels. So my first question to you would be, do numbers really matter? Do they matter?
I think just like what my colleague has said, you have to look beyond the numbers. The numbers give you a very broad roadmap of what gender parity is. And we have the same dilemma when it comes to the kind of dynamic that we look at. Do the numbers create agency? Do they have key dynamics in decision making? Do they actually transform people's lives and livelihoods? And I think that's the challenge, because a lot of our discussion today, whether it's on the gender question or whether it is on the macroeconomic question, is that we're looking at numbers. But if you ask people, has GDP given you or development given you a lived experience that has improved your livelihood, I think you're going to find very difficult answers to that question, because people are still trying to survive at the margins of their economic livelihood. In a similar way, the numbers don't necessarily mean that we have reached gender equality. And that's the difference. The parity and the equality needs to be understood in what is the defining characteristics. If you want the gender equality, it means you got to have empowerment. It means that you don't have to have a party list that keeps trying to say, well, 50% of the party candidate list needs to be women in the list. It has to come naturally. It has to become about where you see the point of, the value of having somebody in the community who is not bound by gender biasness, but rather who has the potential to lead that community. And that, I think, is the challenge. The other issue is that the parity question around the numbers actually obscure what the real issues are, the challenges. So you're playing a kind of tick box approach. You're ticking boxes because it's easy to tick boxes in order to say, well, I've satisfied these outcomes in terms of where I am with my gender parity policy. It doesn't mean that you've created structural reform. Structural reform still requires that you have to go back and transform society, transform economic relations between men and women, reform access to work, etc. And I think this is why there's a younger generation of women today, younger women, who are now much more active and are much more not going to get caught up in the same kind of architecture that they see. That is why it's an evolving activism. It doesn't stop. It continues. The right to be able to make your own decisions regarding your own livelihood, the right to be able to have control of that decision making. You can't leave it to a society or an institution that decides for you. And those are the shifts and changes. So the numbers, yeah, they're nice, but they're not necessarily giving you the kind of internal kind of, architecture around the fact that after so many years, we're now seeing reversals of some of those gains by the women's movement globally, but also in the context of the women's movement in the continent. And so it's not about the numbers, it's about what the structural reforms are.
Interesting. But I wanted to just follow up on that. Can we pursue both? Substantive equality and also push for equity?
Yes, you can. But it has to also mean that structural conditions in society enable that to happen. That it cannot be something that was said now about that getting too involved in the political parties, by the IEC. That was an interesting point for me, because again, the question is, who makes these decisions? I mean, political parties are important, but then political parties also become the kind of center of where that transformation and that equity and that substantive equality needs to come in. Because again, the political parties are caught within their own dynamics of how you want to look at this. So for me, the challenge is not necessarily about, do we legislate quotas, because that's the way we need to do it, or do we have a kind of alternate kind of listing, one male, one female, but who sits at the top of the list. Those are some of the things that we've used. What is important to bear in mind is that there's also this question of to contest an election, to be part of an electoral process, to be part of this substantive equality requires financial equity as well. The money that goes into this. So it is possible, but I think it also needs a mindset change about this.
Yeah, very interesting and quite important to have that mindset shift, because we can't have women just sitting there symbols, but not really being empowered to do what they ought to be doing in those positions of power. Those are quite key interventions. Thank you. I want to turn to you, Me. You mentioned in your opening, the key role that is played by the IEC, specifically in championing democracy in the form of facilitating free and fair elections. So I have a question for you around that, because democracy would mean inclusivity, right? This is enshrined in our constitution. We get that tick all well. But as the IEC, how do you integrate gender equality into the electoral processes and as well as your policies? And what specific initiatives do you have in place to promote women's political participation and leadership in line with your constitutional mandate?
Thank you very much. I did touch in the beginning on the approach that we adopt as an institution in terms of our CDE program. We believe that people don't get into leadership when they get into government. People occupy leadership positions in whatever spaces that they find themselves, particularly women. So our program is about fighting the suppression of women's voices wherever they find themselves. That's why you will find the IEC working with institutions of higher learning, for example, We will work with schools. We'll work with women's formations. We'll work with youth formations, either in and outside of the school environment. Our message is quite clear. You can not only participate in electoral processes, because our key role is entrenching electoral democracy, which includes accountability, representation, rule of law, accountability. Those are the basic tenets of democracy that we try to advocate for in whatever spaces we find ourselves. I'll make an example. When we go to an institution, if it requires us, for example, to assist them with elections, for example, SRC elections in institutions, when we go there, we don't come in and run elections. We go in and saying, what does the life look like in this institution? What does it mean to be a woman finding yourself in a space that is predominantly male in SRCs, in institutions? What is it that we can jointly do to address those gender imbalances in whatever institutions we find ourselves? So we believe that gender equity is not only an issue when we get into government and parliament, it's something that we live which we need to live in whatever spaces that we find ourselves. We go as far as churches and saying, what are the dynamics in the governance of churches? Because the majority of people that you find in churches are women. What is the role that women play in making decisions in whatever structures that we find ourselves? Now, in the Electoral Commission, the highest decision body, which is the equivalent to a board of directors in the private sector, is the commission. The commission doesn't work in isolation. It has commission committees that are made up of people like ourselves, who are provincial electoral officers and other people who have got expertise. Before the commission can make a decision or make a policy change, there are people that do the groundwork. And for me, those are very critical structures. And the mere fact that the commission recognized that we cannot develop policy as the Electoral Commission without involving people that are going to be affected by the policy that's going to come out of that process. And for me, the mere fact that we've got 5 out of 9 provincial electoral officers as women, and all of them are sitting in those commission committees, and not just committees, committees that have got to do with fundamental values and principles that underpin the life of the commission. For me, that's key. And lastly, mentorship. As a woman in the leadership position, you carry the responsibility of mentorship, and I think we've got platforms within the Electoral Commission where we can mentor young people that are coming up. It's a scary environment to be in, and we need to make it not scary for the young people, because we need to say to them, the IEC will make it possible for you to still balance work and professional life, because those are the little things that, unless we are intentional as an institution to say, young people, this is how I managed to do this, and you can do it too. So for me, it's a broad scope of what you can do to make it attractive for young people to aspire to get into those leadership positions wherever they find themselves.
That's impressive. I think we can clap for her. That is quite impressive. As the CGE, we have a mandate to come in and check if all of these things are in place. I'm wondering why we've never done that with chapter 9s. Not to police, but to also learn, because you also mentioning quite a number of key measures and initiatives that others could learn from. But I wanted to follow this up, especially when you speak about initiatives that you implement at community level. I think you've seen for yourselves with the reports that have come from election observers around, the issue of special voting day, that a lot of women, especially those who are pregnant, for example, and persons with disabilities, would show up on the actual day that has been declared for all of us. Many citing they did not hear the announcement, that the special votes and how they carried out, and sometimes just that lack of trust around the many envelopes and so on. Because, in 94, we saw, this is the video that plays out even for us years later, the late Nelson Mandela casting their vote into a ballot box. So people believe that that's the only way to carry out votes. But please elaborate for us around your reach, and how intentional are you to pass on this message around, especially special votes?
our key role is to inform and educate. And the framework for special votes in South Africa was created specifically to make it easy for anyone who wants to participate in elections to participate. Interestingly, though, we find a lot of particularly elderly people who will say, I want the vibe of being at the voting station. I still want to go there. But there is a framework that allows anyone who's, for absolutely any reason, is not able to be at the voting station on election day to apply for a special vote and vote on the 2 days preceding the general election day. And for the very reasons that you have raised now. But also at the voting station itself. If you arrive at the voting station and for some reason you didn't know that you could apply for a special vote, when you arrive, you definitely jump the queue. We have a mechanism that ensures that people with disabilities, the elderly, pregnant women, don't have to stand in the queue like everyone else. But what I think I want to talk about as well, which is quite key, where there's a lot of programs that we run with political parties on the election framework before we get into the election itself. And our role, particularly as women within the Electoral Commission, we have an interest to understand how power dynamics work within political parties themselves. And it is our responsibility to make females within those political parties understand what their capabilities are and what they can do and the role that they can play in making sure that politics becomes a comfortable space for women to participate in. I come from the province where politics is associated with violence. It is our responsibility as the Electoral Commission to make it attractive to women. What is it that we have in place that make it a conducive environment for women to contest elections? We do those programs with all political parties. And like I indicated, outside of political parties, wherever we find ourselves, we are keen in making women understand that they can participate as contestants as well. They can occupy a position of power and make an impact. Because whether you like it or not, when the woman is in a position of responsibility, they relate better to other women, and they will understand better the barriers that other women face to get into those positions. So you can openly speak about those so that it becomes a topic that is not taboo for people to talk about. Women need to see other women playing a role that has an element of mentorship to those that are coming up to make it attractive for more women to get into these spaces.
Yeah, great. I have one last question for you, Sanusha, especially when you spoke about the enabling environment, right? That is quite key. And we recognize that the representation of women is not so good currently across the globe, not just about South Africa in terms of our own context. But when you look across the globe, and even if you zoom into our continent itself, I think we only have about 2 female presidents currently in the continent, so that does not look so good. And we recognize that, yes, the enabling environment is necessary, right? And that there are barriers that limit women's participation or representation. And that's, it ties into everything else that you mentioned quite earlier in your intervention around what needs to happen, the shifts that need to take place for women to be fully represented in what we've come to know as a men's world, a men's game. Politics are often seen as a men's world that is so difficult for women to penetrate. But I want us to give us the global overview. Just take us through what does it look like. Of course, we say numbers do matter, they have their place, but it's not just numbers that matter. But what are they? What are those numbers? How do they look like?
Thank you. I think globally you're looking at an average around, and I stand corrected on these numbers, so don't assume that I know everything about these numbers, so just be careful. It's around about 22%, I think, around some of the issues with regard to occupying those positions in cabinet. And then, of course, you have the positions that people occupy in a parliament or a legislature, which is, again, not high. It's below 25%. But again, I think we also have to look at the nature of the global system and why the nature of the global system also impacts on the representation of women, but more importantly, the issue of how do women actually fare in politics. And one of the things that's fascinating right now with the global architecture is I think we're suffering from a dissociative empathy in terms of how do we look at the globe. It's a global system where it's very, very dystopian at times. There's a lot of conflict. And I think Dr. Rapule will speak about women in conflict and so forth. But what's interesting is that we've become almost normalized when we see conflict in the world today. And most of that impact is on women, on children. If you look at how war is carried out, war has become almost this kind of dissociative empathy, where we are emotional about it, but because it's not within our immediate purview, then we don't necessarily have that kind of empathy. And that's impacting on how women are represented. The question is, in societies that you look at where there are complete dislocation of women's rights, or where women are seen as the nurturers of society, these conflicts are impacting disparately. And I can give you the example of what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Yemen, what's happening in Sudan, what's even happening with regard to the society here, where in South Africa, the issue of intra-state conflict makes it very interesting in terms of how women representation takes place. So I think South Africa is a microcosm of the bigger global dynamics, the challenges that are coming in from the global architecture, and that suddenly now we've normalized what should be activism around women's rights. We've normalized things in society where it's enough to just have a seat at the table and not necessarily the voice at the table. Or we've normalized representation as it's enough to just say that you are in parliament. But what does empowerment of that ability to be in parliament mean? So I think we've kind of, we are caught in a very difficult juxtaposition where the global phenomenon around the rights of women and whether or not, if you have women in positions of power, they represent women's interests and rights. I think that's another debate we could have. But it not necessarily is a correlation. Because at the end of the day, some of the decision-making that's happening in these cabinets around the world, in particular governments around the world, is actually being done perhaps with the express consent of women in those cabinets. And we have to be honest about that. If we're not honest about the fact that there could be this challenge of accountability of women, by women, for women, then we have to think about the impact that has on this issue. So for me, I think the fact that we live in a very dysfunctional global order around how, not just rights of women, but how rights of humanity is being defined is dissociative right now. Thank you.
That is great. And I want to now bring it back to us in South Africa and talk about the role of various stakeholders. For me, particularly the electorate itself, as well as the political parties. There is a phenomenon called voter bias, especially now that we're going into the local elections, where it is perceived that a female candidate, especially when it's not the PR system that's being applied, but where you vote directly, the first past the post system, where you vote directly for a candidate, that because women are, there's this biases and discrimination around their ability to lead, then a few of them get to be seen on the ballot, whereas, that could not even be the case. Women are capable, we all know that. So I want us to address this phenomenon of the voter bias. What role does the electorate itself play in the picture that we are seeing, especially in terms of representation, but also the party bias, that parties themselves are guilty of saying, let's not put the women because they may suffer a loss compared to when they see a male face that inspires more confidence because leadership has somewhat been associated with manhood or masculinity. What role does the IEC play in correct in this picture, if any? I know that you interact with political parties, you also interact with the electorate.
Yes, unfortunately, that is a reflection of the society that we live in. You will notice if you look at the statistics of women that get voted. I mean, we're sitting at 43% now of women as members of parliament. But most of them would have come through proportional representation. So people that are voted for directly as ward candidates, for example, or as independent candidates, I know all of them didn't do well in the last elections, but at local government level, people don't vote for women as ward candidates. It's just the truth of the society that we live in. And for me, I always say, as women who find ourselves in the position of power, we shouldn't be shy to speak out against tendencies of patriarchy when we see them in the institutions that we are in. Because by speaking out, you are not speaking out for yourself. You are speaking out for other women who are aspiring to be where you are. We shouldn't be pussyfooting around issues when we see them in the spaces that we find ourselves in. What I've observed is that if you are intentional about that, and if you become that voice of reason, that actually assists with maintaining that level of gender equity consciousness within a work environment. So for me, those are the things that sometimes we do them not knowingly, but by the way that you carry yourself in that position as a woman, you are sending a message to someone else who is coming in. You are not going to go into the meeting and sit in and say, I want to raise this point, but I know if I raise it myself, it's not going to be taken seriously. Let me tell my male colleague to raise it, and it's going to be received differently. Let us not do that. Because by doing that, in the eyes of whoever is in that environment, it means for a point to be noticed, it needs to be said by a male. But we also can't run away from the fact that we have to work extra hard as women. We have to prove ourselves. Until you have proven yourself, you will be treated in the manner that women get treated generally in the society. Once you are put into that position, and you are required to know what you're talking about. Read, know what you are doing, because you need to prove yourself before you are accepted. You have to prove that you know what you are doing. It's the reality that we cannot run away from until people know that you know what you are talking about as a woman. You're already starting in the back foot from your male colleagues. So it's something that we cannot run away from. Once we arrive in these positions, we have a responsibility for people that are coming behind us in terms of mentorship, and not only in the Electoral Commission, like I said, in whatever space we find ourselves. The imposter syndrome is real. People have been made to believe that they are not worth it. What is it that as women in positions of power we can do to assist that women realize that they have potential? They can do what they have been told over and over that they cannot do. So for me, that mentorship, woman to woman, with people who know these challenges, let's speak out on these things so that people see that there are people who understand where I come from, who will be there to hold my hand as I move along, because it's not automatic.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. And I wanted to just explain the reason I thought that would be important to venture a space to decide. The zebra stripes, for example, to also put in those policies that they have in place to say, we are going 50-50, some say 30-70, etc. But with us now saying, let's vote directly, I was just saying, let's be conscious also of that and what it would mean for us and our voice being heard at the table. Let me release you for now. My wonderful panel, I think you've done so well. You've kept me on my toes. I think you've done so well. You'll come back a little bit later on to interact with the audience. Unfortunately, it's just between the two of us. It's just between the two of us now, Dr. Ditlare. No, not yet.
I've been here since 6 a.m.
No. I'm glad they're encouraging you. It's now going to be between the two of us, just to take this last round. From here on, everybody will get an opportunity. I see you are eager to start interacting. Oh, I'm told that there is keen interest from the young people to participate in this next segment. Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here? Why am I taking instructions from the floor? I think let's encourage her as she comes through. Well done. So you are telling me that the NYDA will also partake. What I'll do is just give them a platform. We won't take it as a panel. I make the rules today. I make the rules today. I'll just give you a platform to just come through and deliver a message, if that's fine. Dr. Ditlar, welcome. I saw you eagerly waiting for your turn over there. And, you know, I was just thinking, how are we going to do this? A two-member panel, just me phrasing all these difficult questions to you directly. But I'm glad that we've now been joined by the young person. Unfortunately, I don't have your name as yet, so I'll ask you to introduce yourself when you get your opportunity. Great. So, Dr. Ditlar, we are going now into the local government elections. And in the previous, 2021 elections, we saw those numbers dipping for women, right? Women's representation was standing at 41% in 2016. It then went to 37%. And some of the challenges have already been alluded to by the previous speaker. But I want us to explain to us, when we put the national picture next to the local one, why do we see such disparities that when you look at the upper house of parliament, for example, numbers tend to be on a good, increase. And if there's a dip, it's not so bad. We're still in the 40s. But with local government, numbers tend to go very, very low. Why is that the case?
Thank you, Naledi. And may I also stand on existing protocols. This is a topic very close to my heart. As a researcher and practitioner, I have published, I have researched a lot on the subject in the continent. And what I can just say is the situation, unfortunately, in the coming local government elections, I foresee a further decline in women's representation. Now, on Naledi's question, yes, at national level, we tend to perform better than at local level. And I want to disagree with you trying to comfort us and saying we are not doing very badly. It's bad. Oh. South Africa has signed many international and regional instruments that speak to gender equality. We are less than 5 years to achieving sustainable development goals. Goal 5 specifically on gender equality. Now, when the announcement was made that the elections will be held in November or to January next year, I was like, getting closer to 2030. Are we going to make it? Yeah. And our own the African Union Maputo Protocol speaks to gender equality. So when we are regressing, we shouldn't take comfort and say, we're still better than other countries in the continent. We have a responsibility, we have the resources, we have the women who are capable of leading. At national level, the numbers of women representation are higher than at local government. And for me, the greatest challenge with local government elections, and this is why I foresee a further decline, is security. I have done a lot of research on women, peace and security and how security or lack of security affect women's participation in elections. A recent example of the attack on former KZN Premier and now Deputy Minister of Higher Education's attack on her house. What does that say to other women aspiring to be in politics? And I liked what you have mentioned about your province, because statistics also indicate that in South Africa, provinces that have relatively higher representation of women at senior level in local government elections, the Free State and Northern Cape, while KZN and Western Cape are performing badly. Look at the violence in those provinces. Generally, violence, whether it's taxi violence, whether it's gangs, and then there's political killings. Where do we find women to come out when it's so unsafe? So, Commissioner, security will be a serious, serious threat. And this is something I know beyond the IEC, but security is a greatest challenge to women's participation in elections. The fear of being intimidated and attacked and your family being harassed, that's what forces women to decline, even where they could be given opportunities. And secondly, unfortunately, the local government elections seem to be very lucrative. It's a cash cow for politicians. There's money there. Yeah. For Honorable Khachau in Parliament, not much. But all the issues around tenders, all the issues around who gets what, this leads to the political killings that we are seeing. Because the men within political parties and other parties, they compete to get to the space, and it's a shame because service delivery is poor, yet people are contesting so much. So the contestation is going to be very high, also because there's so many other political parties. Yet the voter apathy. So if the number of voters is small and the political parties are many, it's going to be a huge problem for who gets what.
Yeah.
And some will use their weapons, their guns to get there. So the provinces that are worrisome are the KZN and Western Cape because of mainly the broader security issues. But also the other challenge, Naledi, is with women with disabilities. There's no available data on their representation. We're not doing well on inclusion of women with statistics, with disability, because we need aggregated data to say disability by type, by age, and then by sex, so that at least when we make preparations and call for their inclusion, we know how many women of voting age have this particular disability, whether it's visual, and provide. And also there is a problem with political parties. There's the lack of commitment and political will from within political parties to put women there. I heard Naledi, you spoke about the PR versus the first past the post. I think if we were to make a recommendation on electoral law reform, the mixed member would be convenient because it would still maintain the PR aspect, which is meant to compensate smaller parties and works to the advantage of women. But it is also the responsibility of political parties to put women on the party lists. But at local government elections, because that's where the money is, and politicians want to loot as they are looting, and the service delivery is not improving. That is why they compete. So bad for local government elections. And the fear that is there, I think we unfortunately, I foresee a decline in the representation of women in
the next election.
In the next election, and we'll talk about some of the recommendations later. Thank you.
Okay. No, thanks for that intervention, Dr. Rabel. Yes, we can clap for her. especially where you are highlighting a critical point around elections or political associated GBV. It's something we hardly talk about, but very important to discuss. But why is there that disparity? I'm just curious that, you know, this 43%, which we saw declining from 46, is it a PR exercise for us to look good? Because generally in the international space, this is the number that is usually considered. But we know that in the NCOP, for example, we're not doing so well. In terms of premiers, we're not doing so well. I can go on and on in provincial legislatures, pardon me, the numbers don't seem to be so great. So is it a PR exercise that we are targeting only the upper house of parliament? And I also want to bring into this conversation the idea of the quota system, right? We spoke about it. In South Africa currently, with the many parties that are coming up, many that are still registering, there's only 2 political parties that speak out about their policies having quota systems. And others have the zebra stripes method, for example. Others are just pronouncements. We don't have it on paper, but we see it in practice, right? And we have parties that say we don't believe in that. We use a merit system. Yet this merit system seems to disadvantage women so much because they're not doing well in those political parties. Why is this? Is it really a PR exercise, or is the intention, behind all of this?
Okay, so when we speak about 50% in parliament, remember, these are representatives of community members that are supposed to help to make legislation. I suppose the role of the NCOP versus parliament are different, and the focus of our representation particularly is more on the political party representation. But the 50% is important, as I indicated, because South Africa does not exist in isolation. We have signed and ratified global instruments that to say we need to achieve 50%. And that is why South Africa adopted of course, there are many other benefits to using the PR system. But one of the best advantages of the PR system is that it allows for parties to include women on the party list. While you look at the first past the post, countries like Botswana, they had elections last year in October. Out of 61 constituencies, only 3 were won by women because of the first past the post. And we understand the challenge. But what we are saying, Naledi, is that let us have perhaps some quota systems and affirmative action legislated and binding to political parties.
Okay.
The quota system legislated and binding for political parties. So that a political party, when it submits the list, deputy chair, it has to be a zebra, men, woman, men, woman, men, to ensure that political parties don't take this as a voluntary exercise. I think that could be a strategy that could really help. Some legislation around quotas that would help. And also quotas for women with disabilities. Oh. It might be a different quota, maybe 20% or whatever, but we need to also get there. So I think political parties need that legislation to the binding for them to say when they submit the party lists, it must follow this.
I think the message is loud and clear. A commitment on paper that all of us should comply. And that if you do not, IEC, we reject. It's not my words. It's her words. Thank you very much, Dr. Ditlare. I looked at the time and I'm realizing that we should be breaking a little bit in terms of our program. So let's just take a 15-minute break. We had her saying, I have not even had tea this morning. So let's do that. And then afterwards, we'll take you as well as the NYDA. So it balances it out. They're wrestling me into making a part of the panel. Thank you very much. Let's meet in 15 minutes' time. NYDA. And also welcome Sandra Leshabela, who is the National RCL President. Please join me on stage. Either side. I think fate is on our side that you get to share a panel together, talking on young people's issues and concerns in their country. Firstly, let me congratulate you both on these wonderful positions that are critical that you occupy. You are the chairperson as well as yourself, and that is big. If we could just give them a round of applause for that amazing achievement. So our focus on this panel will be on the participation of youth, young women and students, as well as learners in electoral democracy. I'll start off by just giving you your 3 minutes to make your opening statements. I think we have 3 mics, so we are sorted. Here's yours, and there's yours. Would you like to start, Sandra? The elders must go first.
Did she just call me an elder? Wow. You see those kids? Thank you very much, Program Director. I think before I begin my inputs on my introduction, I would like to recognize the former Minister of Social Development, Mambata. I think as all the messages that we've gotten here today, we have living examples of people that have stood for women in the country. When it was unpopular for a woman to become president of the country, Mambata drove that narrative that the liberation movement should have a woman president. So there are women that have gone beyond these boardrooms just to speak, but they've acted on what we are speaking about today. On that regard, Siyabonga Mambata for your work that you've done for us as young women in the country. We appreciate you. And greetings to all the wonderful women in the room. You guys look amazing. You're beautiful. So maybe in short, I think our message today on this beautiful day that we've been invited to, we must go beyond speaking about representation, because representation is not enough. Genuine transformation is going to require us that we become intentional in policy and in legislative efforts. As the NYDA, we're here to say that all young women are going to ensure that they're represented, not only in numbers, but also in our intents, in our initiatives as the agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Sweet and short, thank you. Sandra, your opening comments?
Greetings to everyone that is here with all protocol observed. I think maybe we didn't get this right? I, standing before you or speaking before you as the first ever female RCL president of this country. You know, yeah. That on its own speaks volumes. It speaks volumes, especially for the females, right? And I want to emphasize something very important. Before one can become a woman, one has to become a young girl. And a young girl deserves to be nurtured, protected in a healthy environment. So I'm going to be speaking about the challenges that mostly young girls face, especially growing up, you know, because I am opting to become this country's first female president. Yes, standing on that basis, mainly because I believe that there should not be barriers between male and female, because I believe that both genders are very competent, both of them. And if you ask me, I believe that female is more competent, because the man is the head, but the woman is the pillar that is holding that head up. So yeah, I do believe in female leadership and female empowerment, you know. I want the right that is enshrined in Section 9 of the Constitution to actually be as it is, the way it's supposed to be. When it says equality, equality should be equality. There should not be nothing should be compromised in terms of equality, you know. So yeah, I believe in female empowerment.
I feel young again. I feel rejuvenated. It's wonderful to be on stage. You have no idea. Now, earlier on, we touched on the issue of voter apathy among young people, among young women. Now, as the NYDA, you have a critical role that you play in the country, right? Addressing issues that pertain to developmental issues, economic, etc., affecting young people. So in terms of your mandate, do you have lengths and breadths at which you go to encourage young people not only to vote, but to stand in for office?
Thank you very much, Program Director. I think as the National Youth Development Agency, we are an agency that is established from an act. We are responsible for development, for youth development across the country. So one of the pillars of the NYDA that we're responsible for is social integration. So we are required to foster social cohesion and ensure young people are active participants in civil society and development processes. We have what we call the National Youth Service Program that we run throughout the country, where we encourage young people to be patriotic, to ensure that young people work for their country, and to understand what it means to be a young person in South Africa. But I must also say that currently young people are struggling to participate even in voting because they're unemployed. They feel that the funding opportunities that are there, they're not easily accessible to them. Some of them, they go to banks to seek for funding, and they're struggling on that regard. That is why some of the initiatives that we're bringing as this newly appointed board is we want to go to the credit bureau to say they reduce some of the red tape that is there for young people to access funding. Over and above that, we need to ensure that in order for young people to participate in early democratic processes of the country, must have the confidence, they must know that government is there to work for them. And the minute that certain areas of our government doesn't work, if they're not getting any form of employment, then they're not going to participate because there is no reason for me to vote. They'll tell you that I participated in the 2019 elections, I never got a job because political parties, when they were doing their manifestos, they promised us something, and now we didn't get those particular things. So as an agency, we are going out there to young people to say it goes beyond us or a certain political party, but it's us exercising our democratic right, because we can't be a recipient of government initiatives. We need to define them, and the only way we can define them is through us going to register to vote and actually voting for whichever political party that we're interested in.
Sure. And just as a follow-up, so you've mentioned all the challenges that exist, right, that serve as barriers for young people to actually come through. You're saying it's unemployment and the many others that you've mentioned. But how do we get young people to recognize that they actually have the power and the voice to influence what happens through that vote?
So we need to make voting cool. We must make it cool. It must be a trend. You know, when you're around young people, they have different things that they do. There's a new thing called clock it. So they need to clock us being registered to vote. They need to clock voting in order for us to be able to influence policies. Remember, voting is not only about casting a vote, but you influence the policy direction of the country. So we need to make voting cool and nice. It needs to be fashionable to go and register to vote or to even vote.
Interesting message to the IEC as well as political parties. Make it cool. There's nothing wrong with Amapiano. It has its place, so use it, but for the right things.
Definitely.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you very much. Those were interesting interventions from your end. Now let's hear from the young person herself.
Am I not a young person?
You know, we tend to speak for you, over you, above you sometimes. So it's great to have you right here on stage that you can tell us what are those barriers. What do you think it is that keeps young people away from being interested in politics? Does it look like this old thing for old women and men that we should not even, confront ourselves with? Or what are the challenges? Just from your own perspective, your own experience, what do you think those are, the challenges?
I'm going to go ahead and say young people don't have trust, They don't believe in the system. They don't believe in government. They don't believe in politics, mainly because of the status quo. Why would you believe in something that is constantly failing you? It's like pouring water into a bucket filled with holes. You're never gonna get anything from there. And I would respectfully like to oppose with what she's saying. Even if you make it cool, even if you call the best DJs, even if you bring the best setup, it won't make a difference because we see political parties doing it from now time to time. What is needed is effectiveness in the government. We need effective leadership. We need effective leadership. We need accountable leaders. Now, that is where young people can rise and say, now, we're actually interested in this. Because remember, the future of this country is young people. So if we invest something that is a risk on its own, we're placing our futures in a risk. So we cannot take a risk and enter into that barrier. So we need effectiveness. We need accountability. We need assurance that all the promises that they make to us before the elections, we don't just want T-shirts. No. We need to make sure that all the promises that they bring to us before the elections, they can actually deliver. We need deliverance at the level of its best, no compromising.
Right. So Sandra mentions an important factor about accountability. And next year we are going into the local government elections where we know that those are the ones we entrust with service delivery. And I think we can agree that women bear the brunt when there is no delivery of services. How does this affect young people, particularly young women, when these services are not being delivered?
So if there is no water where you stay, maybe those that stay in suburbs, they're not going to know of this. Where Vatarkan comes with water, the people that you're going to see, they're carrying water in their heads, is going to be young women. If there are no street lights, the people that are put in more danger are young women that are likely to be raped or to be killed. If there are potholes that are there, the people that bear the brunt more are going to be women. If there's no electricity, the person that is going to go and start the fire is not a man. Because men don't care whether the kids are going to eat or not eat. So us as women and as young women, we need to be actively participate in elections so that we represent, because we know what it means not having service delivered. We know what it means not having water. We know what it means not having electricity. So going to the local government elections, us as young women, we need to be at the forefront of that. But also, it's quite difficult for us as women and as young women in particular to raise our hands and say, I'm available for this. Because the first thing is that you're going to be intimidated by other men within your space. Secondly, as a woman, we've seen in the previous by-elections where women were being body shamed. Because remember, in local government elections, your face is put up. You are often called, she's fatty, no, she's darky. As if you're a leader, you need to look beautiful. You don't have to. Leadership is not about beauty. So the IEC also, in their reforms, and how they protect women, they need to ensure that they include those particular things so that women are not bullied and body shamed towards the local government elections, unlike the national elections where we only see the president and majority of them are men. So us as young women, we need to participate effectively in registering to vote, because as Sandra says, you can't fight something that is already there. In May 2024, we woke up with GNU. Something that other people are screaming and shouting that is not working. But you can't scream on your outside. You need to vote so that you define what government is going to do. Government is not going to be accountable if we don't go and register to vote. Yes, us making voting cool, it's us encouraging and influencing the policy. You can't want to influence something that you never participated in. It's like walking into the room and saying, this room should have looked like this. But when you are given the opportunity to define how the room should look like, you decided to stand outside the gate. So, on that regard, I'm saying, young women, as the NYDA, I've spoken to the Vice Commissioner, that we're going to be having a meeting with the IEC. As the NYDA, we're going to crisscross the country to go and encourage young people to go and register the vote. We're going to make voting cool. Voting is not for old people. The other young girl was saying, we didn't vote for Chris Hani is dead, and that's her own opinion. But as this generation, as the NYDA, we're going to go out there and lobby all young people to go and vote. Who they vote for, I don't care. But the fact that they would have voted, that's what I care about.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, we can clap. I like that. The sexism that you speak of, that is leveled against women, that's a key issue for us to discuss. You know, with women, it looks as if the odds are always stacked up. You mentioned looks, that you must look a certain way. You know, appear a certain way. If you are darker, there's colorism as well. If you are darker, you may not be, you know, appropriate enough to lead, etc. But there's also a sexism that says only women must come in and change the trajectory for themselves. Is that okay? Do you think that burden should only be carried by women, or all of us as society have a role to play in transforming the space?
I think it's a societal responsibility that we have, because not only men are reactionary in the space, we also have women that are problematic. The minute, I hate to refer to this Mambata, but when Mam Nkosazana raised her hand to say she wants to be the president of the country through the political party that she is aligned with, other women were at the forefront of doing that. Other women were at the forefront of saying she's an ex of whosoever. When Mam Nkosazana has become a leader in her own right. And remember, at that time she was coming from AU, being a leader of the AU. So it's not only it's not only men that are a problem, but us, some women, I don't want to say all of us, some women are problematic in the space. And that has been based on the societal conditions. If you're not raised, or if you're never exposed to a space that is allowing you to think differently, you're going to be that way. That's why I never alienate other young women or women that don't think the same way, that don't have progressive thinking. Because I always say they were never given an opportunity to be in the spaces that we have been allowed to be because of Omambata. They have given us that opportunity. That's why maybe we think the way we think. So sexism goes beyond man. Right. If you're a woman in the room and you have those issues, I'm urging you and lobbying you. If you're not, if you know that you don't like me, rather keep quiet when men are talking about me. Or just walk away, you know? Or coffee phone, just be on your phone. That is okay. So that we create an environment that is conducive. Going to elections, Commissioner, us as women, let's support each other in our different respective communities, political parties, and let's do that. If you know that there's a woman in the community that is doing great work, go and support. Stop saying she's sleeping with whosoever. My leadership has got nothing to do with me sleeping. I think that's my approach on that one.
Thank you. Yeah. Quite key what you mentioned. And tell me, Sandra, are there enough role models in politics? Because we're speaking about women supporting one another. From where you're sitting, do you feel that there are sufficient role models, women that you look up to, that you feel like inspire young people to want to come on board and also take space in this political arena?
In Parliament?
Generally in politics.
Okay, I do look up to Honorable Khaukhau. Out of the odd contrary, I do look up to her, and I do look up to Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. You see, I see myself as a younger version of her, you know. But currently, I'm gonna say no in Parliament, but not because women are not competent enough, because women are shadowed. You know, in every aspect that comes anything brilliant, it has to be associated with a man. You know, so they've created this stereotype in women that only men can do it. So I feel like we need more powerful, more active women in leadership that are going to influence, or rather they're going to motivate. You know, that is my main motive, like to inspire before I expire. You know, yeah. So I feel like there's not much, but with such programs, you know, such campaigns, such growth, we are really hoping for more.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. There's one more question that I'd like to ask you about the role of the RCL. So what we've noted with SRCs, right, in higher education institutions, is that, I mean, these are structures of governance, right? Earlier on you said to me, in the Constitution, so I must get it right. And these are formal structures, right, in these institutions. And what we've noted in higher education institutions is that when it comes to addressing issues related to gender, sometimes they play a key role in being at the cold face of those issues. That the trust you spoke about earlier, that sometimes students and learners equally don't trust formal structures or mechanisms. So they'd rather look onto their peers that they've themselves elected and have placed there to say, I have a challenge. And one of those was sexual harassment, for example, that would be taken to SRCs as opposed to other mechanisms in these institutions. Do you also find that as RCLs, you are confronted with that there are gender-based issues that are brought to you for you to address?
Yes, that is definitely true. They do come to us, you know, mainly because they trust us that much, or mainly because they see our effectiveness that much, because we take things heads on, you know. And I'm going to speak about some of the issues that are brought up. It has to be the issue of sexual molesting, you know, in schools. It's not a secret that there are male teachers who are sexually molesting learners with the intent of, I'm going to give you more marks. It's not a secret that learners themselves are molesting one another. You know, it's something that is crucial. But I'm going to raise a very critical point. There is a way in which the government or the Department of Basic Education can deal with that. Because we have norms and standards in the Department of Basic Education that is supposed to cover infrastructure, but it doesn't cover the security of the school, meaning there's no safety and there's no security within the school environment, meaning the school is supposed to make means for security. So in our eyes, it poses a picture that the DBE does not care as much, because in Section 3 of the South African Schools Act, it talks about compulsory of attendance. So why would a parent send their child to school in an environment that is not safe? They would rather keep their child at home. So I'm speaking about there's so many holes into this. And I'm saying that if we could deal with that effectively, security in schools. We need security in schools. You'd find that teachers are learners are stabbing teachers, or learners are killing one another in the school environment. But that is not being talked about. You know, we look at other things, but when the learners decide to raise a strike, now it's a problem. You know, the principal is not accountable enough. But then when we check the legislation, when we check the regulations, they're not fair. You know, I'm saying that whatever is contributed to the school by the government or by the department is supposed to cover everything from all aspects, all sectors. So I'm saying that, yeah, some of the challenges we face, it has to be safety and security and sexual molesting. There wouldn't be sexual molesting if there was tight security in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. We are led. We are led. I have just one final question before we open for the Q&A, and it is to you, Chairperson of the NYDA. It's about this fatigue that, you know, women sometimes tend to feel because, you know, like we said, we have stalwarts. They've, you know, handed over the baton, but sometimes it feels like we are failing. So women then tend to disappear from the space. How do we leverage on institutions like yourselves to keep the conversation going and bring up that vibrancy from young people to say, take on the baton, let's not get tired?
Thank you very much. I think at some point the Department of Social Development and I think even Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability had what we called intergenerational dialogues that allowed us as the younger generation to interact with the older generation so that we get strength and ideas on how do we stay strong. Because being a leader and being a woman, it's a lot. Like every day you must wake up and breathe and think, am I good enough? is walk into that boardroom. Am I going to be seen as too powerful? Is my character too loud? What do I do? Do I suppress my voice? Do I walk away? It's a lot. That is women we deal with. That is why there's a generation of other young women that have disappeared in the space because of lack of sufficient support and lack of a shoulder to lean on when things get tough. Because as a leader, you cry so many times. And as us as women, we're not expected to cry because we're expected to be strong. But we must allow ourselves to be women. But the women that have gone before us must hold our hands at all material times. So through the NYDA, we're going to ensure that there are intergenerational dialogues that go beyond us and other women that have gone before us, even generations before us. Because one day I'm going to turn 35 and I'm going to leave the NYDA. She must be able to take over. But what is she going to do? She must learn from me what were my mistakes, what were my strengths, so that she becomes a better leader than me. So I think some of the things that we need to do going forward, and those are the things that as an agency we're going to be doing. We're going to be inviting her in some of our initiatives that we're going to be doing. I think even in our partnership with IEC, we're going to bring her along so that we're relevant in schools. So that when I get there with my pantyhose and my heels, the kids are like, Aunt Sunshine. But if I'm coming with her, they're going to think I'm cool. So I think that intergenerational linkage is going to be important in the work that we're going to be undertaking as an agency.
Sure. No, awesome, awesome. I think let's give them a round of applause. As we now open up for engagements from the floor, I don't know how we are going to do it because some of our panel members are already seated down, and I'm sure we have questions that we'd like to pose to them. Can I get guidance on that? Are they going to take them from there? We'll just bring the mic over. And do we have roving microphones in the room? Okay, do we have roving microphones? Great. So I'm proposing that we do it in this manner, that you will put up your hand, be recognized by myself, and then say what your name is and the name of the organization that you represent if you wish to do so. And then you can also identify from the panel who you are directing your question to. So I'll take a number of rounds. I'll be guided by the hands that go up. Also just keep it straight to the point so that everybody gets an opportunity to also ask their questions. It can be questions, it can be comments. I don't know if there are any hands. I'll be guided by yourselves. There's a hand that side. Honorable Kakao, Mebatabile, and there's another one over there. Please make sure to also say who you're directing your question to. We can start over there. Unless if it's a general comment, that's also fine. Oh, and Honorable Advocate, introducing. Okay, we have 5 hands for now. Let's take these 5 and then we'll take another round. Or they need to borrow the microphone. Yes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and few gentlemen in the house. My name is Zingane Zanele Mlambo. I am an education specialist from the Department of Basic Education under the Directorate EMGD, Education Management and Governance Development. I am also the National Coordinator for Females in Leadership and Management. We call it FILM. I am very impressed to be in this gathering. To me, this is empowerment more than a dialogue or whatever, because we can go to heaven and come back smiling. If women are not empowered, it is not going to make any difference. When we say the National Development Plan, together with the Employment Equity Act, are saying there is equity grid, and we are to look at issues of affirmative action, those issues are not issues of saying we must appoint or employ a skirt or a dress, but are issues that says we need to look at the quality that a person possesses to become a leader. The challenge with us as females is when we are to do elections, we don't mind as women to say, raise my hand and say, can I choose Mr. Rabutapi? Instead of saying, I'm choosing Miss Mlambo, because we are jealous of one another. That's number one. We don't want to give space for growth to women like ourselves. We think that if a woman occupies a position, then that woman is better off. Yes, that woman is better off because she has what it takes. And women who have led this country, like Abu Bata, they showed us, they demonstrated to us that we have what it takes and we can make a difference. Now, we are getting into the local elections. We are also getting into the third largest elections of the country, the SGB elections, of which as a directorate we are responsible for. Already we've started advocating. And if you look at the females who are leading as SGB chairpersons, the ratio is 40:60. Women are occupying 40% space of leading our SGBs. Yet things in our schools are chaotic. So a woman's hand can hold better if women are educated, empowered, nurtured, developed, and mentored. We want such spaces. Hence, I started by saying we really appreciate this space. The space where we'll look at women like yourself, Naledi, who are brave enough to be the chairperson of the panel. And I'm looking at you and I'm like, you know what? Next time, as a woman. Unfortunately, we are holding our Women's Day, DBE. They've requested me to be the chairperson of the panel. And so to me, today is like, I'm taking notes, I'm studying, because I want to make an impact, a positive one for that matter. Thank you.
Dumelang Basadi and allies. For those who don't understand Sesotho, good morning, female-bodied beings and allies. Lebitso la ka ke Karabo Lerato Gagau. I am a member of parliament representing the people of the Republic of South Africa through a political party of choice, the Democratic Alliance. I'm also their national spokesperson, and I regard myself a higher education activist. I've been in the higher education space since my years as a student from SRC presidency up until I took up office. I'm serving my second term. It's important for me to do this. I am 28 years old and I am serving my second term as a member of the National Assembly. I am young, I am a woman, and I'm black. And this is something that excites me when I see Patwatana Sandra. I just love Sandra. Sandra Kamrata, it's true. But I must say we do need a female president before yourself, because we're delayed. You can catch up on the queue. My submission is, it's a general comment to the IEC. It doesn't need a response right now, but it's perhaps something you want to marinate your thoughts on. The IEC is not responsible for meddling in the affairs of political parties. That is true, 100%. The IEC, however, holds the responsibility of civic education, electoral education. For me, a very important part of that is electoral reviews, not in the sense of whether we were able to vote and how many of us voted, and if the voting stations were open in time or not, and if we had enough personnel. But it speaks to having an honest, non-aligned reflection of the performance of political parties within the political arena. For me, it is not right that Karabo is the spokesperson alongside Mema Bengu and other political spokespersons must be the only people that must go sell their own propaganda of what's true and what's not. Because where I'm standing, I'm going to say the ANC is corrupt to the core. There's no turning back for them. Mahlengi is going to come back and say, but equally the DA is known to be racist. There's no turning back for you. But in that squabble and those innate propagandas, true or not, depending on who's listening and depending on what you mean, are what part of what exhausts our electorate, that it's part of what also abuse the voters of this country, that it's very easy to sell non-truths to the electorate, whereas we have an IEC that could say the role of championing democracy means when the 400 million political parties that exist in this country each go to the polls to say, Tumamina, it is the responsibility, in my view, of the IEC to say, okay, in 2019, the Democratic Alliance's manifesto said this. Let us have a look back of whether in opposition or in government they've been able to implement those things. And it's not up to you to judge. Yours is to have a scorecard of analysis and let the people judge, right? That's just something. It's going to be awkward because, I mean, standing here, I know who the worst performer is. And again, it's my job to know that. But I think it will help for us to depoliticize civic education around the role of government and their performance. And so that's just something I think the IEC might want to consider. It's very dangerous, but do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sanbonan, let me acknowledge the Deputy Chairperson of the IEC, Janet Love, and chairpersons of other institutions and a leader of young people. And thank you for this dialogue. Firstly, during the dawn of democracy, I think we were demobilized to a certain extent. Because when there are challenges facing us as South Africans, we go and hide in our silos and let a few people to shout. And after they shout, they are being targeted and called names. And as long as we allow a situation of being thrown into the corners and not being able to mobilize the society around burning issues that touch issues of, for instance, human rights, issues of gender-based violence, we're not going to be able to move forward because you can't move forward standing. Then one other issue that I would like to raise is that it was a very long road before we achieved a 50% representation as the ANC Women's League in the ANC. I'm sent here by the ANC. And I'm wearing a scarf with Mashope because this is the 100th centenary of, it's the centenary of Mashope. And whilst the ANC was busy organizing her centenary, she passed on. So we are celebrating it. Mashope is one of heroines that fought for what we are and where we are today. Now, we started with 30%, 50%, and then when we arrived at 50%, there was something that was said that, okay, you want 50%, you will get 50%, but after 20% of the list that is voted democratically by all members of the ANC, because we must leave some semblance of democracy. And then we saw that these people want to be on top of the list. They want to ensure that they are in parliament. And so we had to tackle that. Now, that is why we have men, women, men, women, men, women, or women, men, like that. But we are not yet there, up there. So we must still fight for that. But what we must also remember is that we were able to participate in the negotiations because of working together as political parties and other women's formations. We worked together. But after the elections, we went back to our parties and we forgot about issues of gender equality and gender and equity. Now, one other thing that I think we remember when it suits us is to talk about patriarchy that is structural, and that as South African women, we are still faced with the antithesis of race, class, and gender. And patriarchy is very persistent to fight. And as long as we speak as if we are no longer faced with those challenges, we're not going to move forward. But also, we are the majority. We have the demographic dividend. And what we have today was not given as a present. We fought for. And we are not saying women are homogeneous. Women want different things at different times. But we must always treasure what we have achieved, but not forget that there are still other challenges that are facing us. And gender parity is one of the instruments that are used by institutions such as CEDAW. Also, UN Women is using gender parity as a measurement. So we are going to use those instruments, but integrate them to others, because it's not a gender parity only. So let's work together and not be afraid to talk about the issues of women, because patriarchy is in our homes, it's in the streets, it's at the workplace, it is in boardrooms, it is in schools, it is everywhere. So you can't fight patriarchy when you are disorganized. So we need to come together and talk as women, but also as older women, ensure that we pass a legacy and the baton to younger women. And they must not see us as the enemy. And they must not just see us as these old women that like talking. Not we must pass over the baton gracefully and peacefully. Thank you very much.
So the fourth question was coming from this side. Okay. We'll take another round.
Good day, everyone. My name is Noluthando Nzimande. and I'm a community development practitioner, as well as an activist for women and girls, and currently working for Embrace Dignity. I feel very honored to be in the presence of all of you. You look beautiful. Thank you so much for your presence, and especially the speakers. I remember reading somewhere that if you want to measure your success, you must look at who is at the very bottom of your beneficiaries, your clients, your target group. So, as a country, IEC, NYDA, Elena, if you look at the person who's at the very bottom, Elena in the Eastern Cape, far end of the deepest village in the Eastern Cape, a beneficiary woman looking into getting funding by NYDA, Ole Eslalim, who doesn't even know how to get into the website. When you look at those people, do you feel that you've worked hard enough to bring women into the empowerment, into the spaces we're talking about today? It is great that we get to be here, and somehow we get to be their voices. But if we were to be measured by their empowerment, their journeys, their successes, I met one young girl who runs a brick making business. Told her about NYDA funding. Her first response was that I don't have an ANC membership. An IEC rep is Lalini in the village will give privilege to her traditional leader, to her headman, because that's how life is. Over a pregnant woman, over an elderly woman at the voting station. So when we look at those dynamics, how well are we doing? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, she's over here.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Just to brag a bit, Naledi is an employee of the CG, senior member. I just wanted to brag. Thank you. Mine is basically just a comment, just to say, you know, it's well and good sometimes to emphasize certain groupings within our society, and it is important that we are always alive to those groupings. But I just want to say age is a natural biological concept, but has been reconstructed by patriarchy as currency. You know, when you are a woman and you are a baby, everybody focuses on, baby girl, everybody focuses on protecting you, and you grow and everybody focuses on grooming you for one day to be a woman that represents the family well. And you get to a certain stage and your currency even triples, because now you are ready, your body is ready for marriage, for all sorts of things, but one of which is you're going to find a husband, bear them children, please them, and be good to them. So it's important that we end up not playing into that, because that same woman, if we take them, when they're a girl and they get married, then well and good, everybody's happy. In fact, our parents tend to say, hey, only BA, but the BA comes after the other people have come to pay for lobola. Your currency is somebody wants to marry you. This is good, but guess what? You are a graduate, so let's make them stew a bit. And then we move on to have that same young person fall pregnant, and wow, you're living up to our expectations. Excellent. If you bear children, happy. The mother-in-law and everybody says, my daughter has got children. You have performed. You bear boys, wow. It's like, wow. Extra achievement. You know, and so it goes. until you get to a certain stage where society just feels deda, tetela banye, sutela babang. But why I'm raising this is because we as women sometimes tend to jump on that bandwagon. And that is a patriarchal clarion call. Dedela abanye. Real feminism and family orientation and everything tends to value everyone, including that matriarch who with broad shoulders carries everybody right up to their grave. So sometimes when we say, mabahambe to go and raise their grandchildren, bafunani, we are saying what men say about us. And we are actually saying, your value is done. Go and sit under the tree, or urule ka tlasa fate mamelodi, or hlokomelle bana. And it is wrong. And it is us women who must start pushing that agenda. Or no, every woman and man, in fact, until they get to the grave, they still have value. Why I'm emphasizing this is because we've got provinces. When you get to a certain stage and you develop osteoporosis and you bend, and later you even have dementia, and you get a bit confused. And along the way, you can even have Alzheimer's. You are a witch. You can be stoned to death. So we must be very careful about some of these things. In other provinces, you have young men who go tabi to go for initiation, and they come back. And now the fashion is no, you don't have only ugususa ifuta utluse sinyamase onto young girls that you do not know. Even the old useless ones who are waiting for death, ungayenza kubo. So when we talk down to our mothers and grandmothers, all because we are at that age where our currency is at its peak, we must start understanding that there's a version of this narrative is actually a very patriarchal and deadly narrative to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the first round. We'll take another one. I think more than anything, we were able to capture comments rather than, direct questions. There are here and there a few questions that have been posed. But even with the comments, I'll give members of our panel an opportunity to just reflect. The first one, what I could capture was around, how as women we don't support one another. And I'd like for a panel member, Dr. Ditlhare, to please reflect on this, that do women really hate one another? Or is this just another agenda of patriarchy? Because all of us are part of that system, and it tells us how to behave, it socializes us, and sometimes produces who become in society. So just your reflection on that. We'll take another round and then closing remarks from everyone in the panel. Thanks.
To all the people who raised comments and questions, really valuable. This problem has been there for a while where women don't support each other. It's heartbreaking. We have the numbers, but when it comes to making the mark, would prefer a male candidate over a female candidate, as she made an example of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. But we can still work around it, mentoring and changing attitudes and stereotypes against women in leadership and women in politics. But we need media to also support us, and I'm glad there's a big representation of women. How media portrays women in politics and women in leadership, it goes a long way to influence how people out there see us. Because now they'll be like, oh, so you want to be like Ditlhare, that one who does so. They never portray women in politics in a positive manner. So we need to work together with the media and mentoring, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well captured. The second comment was, it was a question, but Honorable said you don't even have to answer now, so we won't put the IEC under pressure. But what I could capture was that, IEC, you have a much bigger role to play beyond ensuring that we have voting material on the day, that voting starts on time, closes on time. We have, all the officials in place and everything else. But that you have a role to play in holding political parties accountable. With that example made around political party manifestos, some recycle them. I can say that with confidence because I read them. But to say, how do we then say to the citizens, this party X said 1, 2, 3, 4, how far are they in materializing those, especially those that come in and occupy these political seats. So just your reflections, you don't have to directly answer. But Mema Singh, I thought I could direct this one to you by virtue of association. Otherwise, any other member of the IEC can take it. I don't think we are restricted. Would you like to take it? Or you'd like the commissioner to take it? I can, but I would like to She should take. No, she said no pressure. I reiterate that.
No, thank you very much. We do a lot of studies as the Electoral Commission, and it's one of the studies that we can commission, but I need to stand. Oh, okay, sorry. I was saying we do a lot of studies as the Electoral Commission, and we are not averse to a study like that. We may not do it ourselves as the Electoral Commission, but it's a study that people will appreciate, I think, to just look back. Because if it's done by us, whoever fares badly on that report, we are in trouble. We as the Electoral Commission, we're very careful on what we do and what we do not do, and we know when to outsource and not to outsource. But I fully agree with you. Ours is to inform and educate, and part of educating is training people how to make informed decisions when they vote. And that's the most difficult part, because the moment you say, no, if you are not happy with this one, vote this one, and we are in trouble. Right. Because it said, oh, okay, you are telling people now that if they are not happy with me, they need to vote for this one. So it's a very thin thread that we have to maneuver as the Electoral Commission. But for me, educating people on how to make an informed choice is not an IEC responsibility alone. It's everybody's responsibility. That's why we always say, wherever you find yourself, let's just train our minds to think in a particular way when it comes to elected officials. In any setup, when there's a governance structure, there are people that elect those people that are expected to keep them accountable. That's why I always say, I always use the example of a church. They are decision makers in the church and they are congregants. To what extent are those people who are in the governance structure in the church still carry the interests of the congregants at heart when they run that church? In a school environment, if you're an SRC, to what extent do you still take the interest of those learners that elected you into office at heart when you become an SRC? Is being in the SRC a vehicle to get resources, to host parties, and forget about the people that put you in those positions? So I always say, whoever is in a position of leadership in any setup, carry that responsibility with them, because people can't start keeping political parties accountable if they can't keep their own governance structures wherever they find themselves accountable. It's just as that. But I fully take that challenge as the Electoral Commission. For us, it will be part of educating voters to make informed choices when they go out to vote.
Excellent. Okay. The third aspect, what I could pick up from Mayor was around the glass ceiling effect, despite there being transformative policies in place. So there are those parties that will say, we have a quota system, we have zebra stripes, but up there, it's so difficult to get through. Hence, you even mentioned the fact that we haven't had a woman president in such a long, forever, in time memorial. We had an acting president at some point, but never fully had a president run, their full term. So this one is to you, Sanusha. Could you just share your reflections around that parties will pose as though we are good, We have all of these mechanisms, but sometimes it's difficult to shatter up there.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that politics generally is a contested space.
Right.
And then when you add the whole question of the role of women and the advancement of women in politics, it becomes even more contested, because it's then about navigating these different dynamics in terms of what we never spoke about and we should be speaking about is the issue of power, and how power is used as a transactional process, and the use of power in terms of what is the role of political parties in the kind of democratic architecture we have today. There's a fascinating discussion happening globally about democracy and the role of democracy in terms of advancing the kind of equitable international order. And the mention of UN compacts and frameworks like the SDGs and the MDGs, but also what happened last year at the UN General Assembly, where you had the whole kind of discussion before the UN General Assembly on the Pact of the Future, the Pact for the Future report. And the Pact for the Future report is linked to how do we get Agenda 2030 going, but what goes beyond that. And there's a lot of criticism about the Pact of the Future report because, again, the question is women are seen as secondary actors in this whole kind of entity. And so if they are if we are assuming and making the assumption that women actually constitute the largest constituency globally, they're going to drive particular dynamics around development, and based on the discussion we had today, how do we deal with these global compacts? Because some of the SDGs will not be achieved by 2030. And the motto of the SDGs is leave no one behind. But from where I'm sitting, there's a lot of people being left behind. So I think the challenge for us is how do you deal with politics and the power of politics, and what is politics in terms of the aspirations? I mean, sometimes you see this in the most localized level of your society, whether it's school governing bodies, whether it's body corporates in your complex, how these things play out. But it's again the question of politics and interests, and how do you see that? So again, the question around women in politics, it's contestable, it's contested, but it's not necessarily unattainable.
Sure. I feel like I'm in a lecture hall somewhere, Vits. As we unpack politics of power and all of that. That was such an interesting intervention from your end. I learned a lot from that, I must say. Now, the fourth one was around if we're doing enough, and specifically NYDA, ensuring that there's inclusive development and transformation in light of dynamics of nepotism, corruption that we know that is so perverse in society. Have we shifted the needle? Are we purposeful in our efforts to ensure that we reach everyone?
Oh, thank you very much. I think I should start by saying we are sorry to all the young people that have gone to the NYDA to look for help and they were never satisfied. We want to start by apologizing to those young people. I think secondary, it comes from a space that says, if you have to go back and forth to a place, you end up being frustrated. I remember some of those young people, they come from rural areas to go to towns so that they're able to access the agency. And they take imali yabo yokugcina, bagibele ngayo, and go to town. And they are sent back because there's a certain document that they don't have, there's something that is not signed in terms of compliance. So that is one of the areas that young people continue to suffer from. Then psychologically, then when you wake up and then you see that Sandra got the funding and you did not, something kicks in your mind. Maybe it's because I've seen Sunshine taking pictures with Sandra. It might be some of what makes them think that particular way. But I can stand here and say that the agency has strict compliance issues and requirements on how you get grant and funding. But so that we're not reactionary to problems, and as the newly appointed board, we just got into office yesterday. It was just the 1st of August, like we just arrived. But what we are going to do as part of our strategy as this newly appointed board, we're going to have what we call Panda Thursdays. So those that are young like us, they would know that there is something Mambata called Puza Thursday. That's where we go there, we drink, and we have fun as young people. It's called Puza Thursday. I know you don't know those things. But to change that particular narrative, as the agency, we're going to have what we call Panda Thursday. Siyo Panda. If you listen to my piano, there's a song, it's Siyo Panda. There's a song like that. So as the agency, at least the program director even knows the song. So as the agency, we're going to have that. Those are going to be called Youth Service Days. We've even lobbied the Deputy President of the country through a committee that he chairs that is called Human Resource Development Council to urge all government departments and the premiers and provinces to say on Thursdays, we're going to be in community halls where we're going to be accessible closer to young people, where we're going to have the NYDA giving out their job placement programs, funding opportunities. We're going to be there with IDC, CEDA, in case bringing Itala on board, and different government entities and opportunities, even private sector. There's something called MasterCard. MasterCard has a lot of opportunities, but people don't know of those opportunities. I also learned of them in the meeting we had with the Deputy President. So we want MasterCard to be found in Ngutu, emceeing in the deep places in Spread within the Eastern Cape. That's where we want these services to be closer to young people, so that young people don't wake up and say, this one got funding because they're closer to the chairperson. All young people in South Africa, we're going to ensure that in a ward level, NYDA and the different opportunities that are given by government are there, so that we're also able to hold government departments accountable on what they are doing for us as young people. We're going to take them there. One would then argue that how we're going to do this, their budget constraints and. So we're saying in your day as an employee, one day in a week, you're going to go and work in the rural areas. We want the CEO, the DGs, the chief directors to be found in those community halls with young people, so that they see and they realize the lived realities of young people, so that they don't sit in offices with their aircons and think that everything is fine. So that is the initiative that we're driving as the NYDA. So maybe you can inform or on after the engagement, give me the details of the young person who has a bricklaying business that we're able to get closer to that. I think those are my inputs.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that response. And lastly, Sandra, the question about age being weaponized to divide us as women. What's your take on that? You can share this one.
I'm mainly going to talk about Parliament. So I'm really glad that the Minister of Basic Education is still young. You know, I'm very much proud of that. But I feel like I'm not calling anyone old. You're not old. You are young at heart. But I feel like the older you are, it seems like it's the more responsible you are. But which is true. But we can also see that in young people. You know, we can also see that responsibility being reflected in young people. You know, so I feel like certain positions should not be appointed to elderly people, but we should check the competence of those people. If I am young and there's someone older than me, but I'm proving to be more competent than person, then I can definitely be the Minister of Defense, if you get what I'm saying. So I feel like it's in that mentality that in Parliament, certain job positions, they only allocate people who are older. And that is why you find that there is a decline also in terms of youth votings. I'm just going to give them a time to settle down so I can proceed. Okay. Okay. So you find that the youth, there's a lack of participation from the youth. Because even if I participate, even if I have interest in a certain leadership position, I won't get it because I'm old enough, you know. And you'd come back and finding the regulations that of this country are saying that 65 from above, when you are supposed to be a retiree. But then you'd find that basically the minister of something is close to 70. So I'm saying that let's check, before you create a regulation, before you create legislation. I mean, right now, it's like forcing me to listen to Brenda Fassie. I feel like in order to lead a pack of people, they are happy because I mentioned Brenda Fassie. So I feel like in order for you to lead a pack of people, you need to be aligned. I feel like there should be an alignment. When you compare all the members of parliament or all the members who are holding big leadership positions, I'm telling you, it's only Honorable Sifiwe Kgarube, who is younger. The rest are older, and I feel like that is why you would have a glimpse there and there. But I'm not saying anything bad. I respect my elderlies. If something that I do is respect the elderly, but it's something that needs to be said. It's something that needs to be stated that just because we are young, we're very competent and we're very capable to hold certain leadership positions, So I'm just saying to the leadership of this country, it's your own regulations that 60 and above, you're a retiree. So let's try to keep up to it.
She makes me weak to my niece, Sandra. Let's take another round of questions and comments. Are we running out of time? So there's a few hands. I'll ask that we keep it very short. And I won't ask panelists to speak if there was no question. So we won't do reflections on comments. So I can see that there's a lot of hands that have already gone up. We'll only answer questions. And as we answer, then panelists can also just render their closing remarks. You have to help me. Should I start on the left and go this way? Clockwise, ne? We start, okay, let's be fair and start this side. Can I see the hands again? So that I can just count. So there's 1, 2, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, let's just keep it brief. I'm going to suppress you at some point. Okay.
Beautiful ladies. I just have a question. I'm not sure whether it should be a question or a comment. I think Futi spoke to the work that we do as Electoral Commission. I'm Kayagazi Makutumane and I'm working for the IEC. I'm the head of the IEC in the Eastern Cape. I would love to hear from the young people. She did mention that we normally assist universities with their SRC elections. And when we go there, the voter turnout would be 15, 20%, 25%. They've raised issues as to why they do not partake in national and provincial elections. But what are your own issues? Why is the voter turnout so low for your own SRC elections?
Number 2 can go.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Patisoma Gopeni. Quickly, I think in the context of this conversation, I'm the vice chair of the African Women in Media. It's a Pan-African body of media, women in media. And the question that was raised by the doc there about portrayal of women in the media, it's something that we are paying attention to. In fact, we approach the representation of women at three levels: as journalists, as story subjects, as media owners, and as voices, expert voices, as in commentary, because you hardly find, particularly women commenting on political issues. We end up rotating the same voices because there are very few women who are brave enough to go out there and comment on political issues. But I think my question, it's not quite, in fact, I want Dr. Sanusha, Ms. Sanusha Naidu to respond to this, because I do think that she's quite capable of responding to it. I was listening to Sandra talking about, even if you bring the best DJ or you give us t-shirts, we won't come because we have become accustomed to it. All political parties do so. And therefore, that's not going to induce us to go and vote. And I'm hearing the side that we are going to make voting cool. What does that mean in the context of what Sandra is saying? So how do we find generational empathy in how we encourage women to participate in electoral processes? There was also something that was said about elderly women and how we relate to them as people who still think that we have energy and we can walk around. I'm not young. So Ms. Naidu, can she address the issue of generational empathy where women are concerned?
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry for cutting you short. Number 3, I think we had the third one.
Thank you, Chairperson. This side.
Okay, I thought I had someone speaking this side. You can go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Chairperson, we have someone this side. I'm sorry, I'm a sign language interpreter. There's a deaf person signing their questions and comments.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Millicent Zuma, and I am a part of the presidency working group for persons with disabilities, and I also represent a national women's representative for people who are deaf. And then firstly, my first point, I would like to raise an awareness with regards to the interpreting services. Please may we be aware that we have interpreters at this corner, and when people move up and down, it disrupts our concentration and our communication. Please may we be aware of that. Secondly, I would like to also bring to the IEC's attention regarding our youth and women with disabilities. So we have, because of our children who go to special schools, there's a lot of delays. Some may still be 18 or even 22 years old, but still in school. But there are parents that are not aware that these people need to have IDs and they are eligible to vote. So if IEC can maybe look into this matter, because they would say that because the person is still at school and they're not yet adult enough to be able to vote. So it's very important that we bring to your attention and create awareness that we need to empower our people with disabilities, be it deaf or physical disabilities. So also we have a lot of voted teachings and trainings that need to be done, not only for the persons with disabilities, but also the family members. Because someone from an age of 18, you find that maybe they're still doing grade 11 or 12 at school, but they still not having an ID, they can't participate in registrations and voting. So we also have a very big concern in terms of our youth in schools. So you find that the persons, like the previous speakers have mentioned, that with the lack of security, people tend to be harassed and abused at schools. And with persons with disabilities, it becomes very difficult to report because of the fear or also not being discriminated. So I'm sorry, I'm a very passionate person with disability issues, and that's all I can submit for now. Thank you.
Quite evident. Quite evident. So we can continue this side then. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Fezu Ndwayana, and I'm speaking in my personal capacity. I'm a spokesperson of a certain agency. So whatever I say, please do not associate it with the agency. First of all, I think we cannot underestimate the role of women that came before us. I really love what Honorable Hau did when she began, and she gave us her entire CV. I was very, very impressed, even though we come from different political homes, but game, recognized game, you know? Yeah. But with what she said, I was actually inspired, and I wanted to say that first, I want to thank activists like former President Ubathabile, because their generation fought for 50-50, but it didn't end there. There was a resolution that the ANC Women's League took, and it was to form what they call the ANC Women's League Young Women's Desk. And during the presidency of Mubata, the young women's desk was very alive. And I am one of those young women that actually benefited from that. Mamubata, they took us into, even Comrade Sunshine, as she's sitting there. Mamubata, they took us in. They nurtured us. I remember I was the media liaison for the Young Women's Desk at National. And we would go to the SG of the time and the president and say, Mama, we want to do this. Because we had very radical ideas that are not welcome in the space. And they would say, do it, we'll defend later. And out of that, as I close, out of that, we had comrades like the late Baveli Lehlongwa, very young, became a deputy minister of minerals. We had the likes of Tsotso, who became MECs under the ages of 35.
Right.
So there have been young women that have been recognized. But even in parliament today, it's not just Siviwe. We have young people like, who is not a woman, but still young, under 35.
Yes.
Zuko Kodlimpi, the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. We must recognize that. But as I close, I just want to say to you, Comrade Bata, when you go back to Lutuli House, please tell our current SG and President, young women are saying, towards the local elections, we don't want them to just say we want 50-50 quota. We want 50-50 in mayors and speakers as well. That must be well represented.
Sure.
And I know for this, even the NYDA
I'm so
chair
sorry.
agrees.
I'm going to have to cut you. I'm so sorry. Let's take the next speaker. I think we have how many more? 2 or 3 more? 3 more. Okay. Please keep it short.
Program director.
I'm sorry.
You must not do that. You guys were chewing on our time and now we can't chew back. You are sitting with politicians here. Let's give everyone a chance.
Sure.
I would like to salute each and every beautiful woman in this room today. I am Devanay Steenberg, a former president of a youth league for the Patriotic Alliance, the fastest growing political party in South Africa. Yeah. And also one of the best ministers. You're shaking your head, Wena. One of the best ministers also in our party, Mr. Mackenzie. Yeah, you know him, Mr. Happiness. So you said I must go straight to the
Questions or comments, yeah.
But I want to make a small comment, especially I want to bite on something that Naledi said. Naledi, you are one, I don't know what to say about you. Is it Sunshine?
Dr. Sunshine.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not very good with names. Sunshine, you are indeed a sunshine. When I listened to you speaking, you spoke wise words. You influenced a lot of us in this room. You spoke about sexism and how people tend to body shame one another. It makes me think of when my political party once deployed me to Westbury. When we got there, myself and my colleague, she is the head of elections for the Patriotic Alliance. I'm a deputy, so they deployed us there. When we got there, we just came in as females and just vurvide. And then everyone was so annoyed with us just working the ground and as the Patriotic Alliance wanting to take over that specific ward for that by-election. There was a picture of the two of us that trended, and they said to us, I can't remember, Melissa, what did they say we are? We are the fat kids. You can see Mosam, not the skinniest person in the room. They said to us, we are the fat kids. And then when I checked that picture, I said, you know what? If I was not a person who is comfortable in my own skin, this thing would have killed me, you know. I'm not a person of doing makeups and what, so I'm just comfortable in my own skin. So yeah, that is something that we should definitely look into. Right. And thank you for raising that question, Sunshine.
Another question.
One thing.
One more thing.
That is not a question, it's just a comment. Okay. But then I have a question.
Sure.
I want to pose this question to IEC and also to the entire room. I wanted to find out from the INC, how do they intend on strengthening their influence to ensure that young women in particular become more active in society? The reason I ask this question is because I've noticed that many young women are being human trafficked as we currently speaking in our country. Seeing that we have such a huge amount of influential women in this room, I wanted to know from you guys, how do we eliminate this crisis? The other speaker also mentioned that safety and security is a great concern, mostly in the Eastern Cape and in the Western Cape. Could we maybe see the human trafficking more concerning than the safety? Where is our woman going to? I would like for us maybe to engage after this and see what is happening to our women. Are we really looking or researching around about what is transpiring in South Africa? I also have other questions, but then I don't want to eat on your time.
Sure.
We can speak afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you for raising those important questions. I think we have two more, and then panel members, please prepare to answer and do your closing remarks.
Is it good afternoon? Actually, it's still good morning. Good morning, beautiful ladies. My name is Dumi Ramakwaba. I'm from the IFP. I wanted to ask a question, but I think I will just, I'm not even sure, but I'll just stick to the comment that I have. It's so comforting to actually be in the same room, especially in the political landscape, to actually learn that we sort of have the same issues in terms of gender equity and gender representation in our political parties. The CGE will agree with me that in the previous elections, they had a look at how women representation was actually achieved within political parties, and we are not anywhere close. And I'm not too proud to stand in front of you coming from the IFP. I don't even want to talk about the numbers because the numbers are not looking so good. However, this goes to my, this is just a preamble to my comment. As women in the political spaces, are we not the enablers of the system? Are we not the actual culprits that enable men to be so comfortable in, stepping on each other to get to the top? I think, Sunshine, you mentioned it when you said when Nkosazana Zuma wanted to become the president. It was us, it was women at the forefront to say, she is actually ex to this, she slept with this. Are we doing the same with men? Do we go out there and check Uguti, how many young girls did this person sleep with? How many women did this person rape within the organization? We don't do that. I remember in one of the meetings in my political party, one of our male counterparts was talking, and he said to us, we need to give women positions. We need women to play in senior leadership, but they have to be competent. We must ensure that they are competent. And my question was, do we question your competency when we want to vote you in power?
Yeah.
Do we question your qualifications when we want to vote you in power? So I want to say a lot, but I'm going to keep to this one and say, as women, isn't it time, Mamba Tabile, that we do some introspection and say, have we been quiet long enough to enable the system to trample on us? How can a powerful young woman such as Sunshine tell us here that when she goes to a boardroom, she second guesses herself? It's the impact of patriarchy. Men have made us to believe that we are not capable enough.
Right.
The system has made us believe that we are not able to do it with or without them.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's the last
You can
one.
clap hands. You can clap hands. I gave the mic to her and I said, ladies first. So the reason I'm going last is because someone said earlier, leadership don't start when you join politics. It starts on the ground. And this is where we are. The reason why I'm taking the stage is because I want every other woman that hear me should be very proud when they walk around. I first want to say good morning, dumelang, sambonani, goeiemorgen. My name is Melissa Davids. I'm from the dusty streets of Westbury. And you all know Westbury for what it is. I can even hear someone says, yes, that's how painful it is. But as a young lady from the dusty streets of Westbury, raised by a single mom who's a Tswana lady from the Free State, her words to me was, you have no rich family, no inheritance, no nothing to fall back on. I lost my mom when I was 12 years old, my dad when I was 2 months old. So you could have thought how I had to struggle to educate myself because I didn't have a mom that was very intellectual. But she said to me, do for yourself what I could not do for you. And that stuck with me for the longest of time. She didn't say, get yourself a man to do for you what I couldn't do for you. So as a young lady standing here in front of you, I'm raised by a Tswana mom, colored father. I'm a chairperson, provincial chairperson of Izwila Bantu Forum, a very well-recognized organization that I didn't know from a bar of soap. I met Noma Mbata at one of the events where I advocated for our young people, women, and for our community. I became the provincial chairperson not because I love the stage, like I'm standing on here now, but because I love being the voice to the voiceless, because I understand what it is when you don't have a voice. I'm also the SGB chairperson of the school governing body because I care about the upbringing of our future generation. I'm a former proportional representative councillor, a PR councillor under the capable leadership of Patriotic Alliance. Now, when I touch on that, I don't want to take too much of your time. I just want to say to you, if you look in the room, you don't see a lot of people of color. And that is the sad part, and that's why I want to come to you, my beautiful sunshine, and just appreciate you for apologizing in advance. When it comes to the NYDA, I'm 37 years old, just so by the way, and before I turned 35, I started my own company, myself and my sister, and we went to NYDA every single time, and we are faced with backlash. We are faced with, you don't have this, you don't have that, you're not good enough. And I registered our company 2015, but never ever did we get any funding from them because we were always told long stories. So I want to know on behalf of every other marginalized community, what integrated approach are you going to take to actually come to the ground? Because I can tell you I'm on the ground every single day in Westbury, but nobody ever comes to Westbury because they only hear about gun shooting, killings, and every wrong thing. So I want to know from you, how best will you find ways to come to us on the ground? And for our beautiful lady here, the IEC, what amicable solution or approach would you find in grasping and absorbing these young people? Because now Horde Governance is saying at Akakrans that if you are not IEC registered, you cannot apply for jobs. But why not find an amicable solution to actually get those kids in on the program and then use that opportunity to actually register them to vote for registration? And in conclusion, I just want to say to each and every one of you, I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I want to mention, if it wasn't for His Excellency Gayton McKenzie that has started the party where we see no DNA but only RSA, I would have never ever touched the surface of government offices. I thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you so much. You made it so hard for me, all of your speakers. I mean, I was wondering, are they going to hit me if I go to them and say, bring back that microphone? No. No, we've come to the end. I'll now invite members of our panel for a minute, please. Just do your closing remarks. I'm going to be a little bit hard on you because I know with you I can apologize later at lunch. You can go first, sure.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you to everyone for the comments. And to the question, I'm going to be as abbreviated as possible. I think you raised the point about generational empathy, but generational empathy is about trying to find that common ground between how things are traditional and how things modernize and move forward. And I think very often it's about the experience, the engagement that people have as they move through their different kinds of roles, both in the house, outside of the house, community, etc. And as you modernize, what was traditional roles in terms of the role that you played in the house tends to evolve. So if you were a grandmother that didn't work, and now there's a new generation out here that sees career paths as more important than getting married and having kids, it has that kind of generational empathy. But I think the challenge for the generational empathy, again, is the question of how do you find each other. It's not just about workplace and your role and your identity in terms of your evolving identity as a woman, but it's also the question of the generational experiences you have. And that becomes critical. And in closing, Chair, I think what is interesting around this is that it's also informed by levels of inequality. We spoke about race, oppression, etc., but it's also the levels of inequality. Some women are more unequal than others, and it links back to those dynamics. The second point is linked to when you look to your parents and your grandparents, you say, I don't want to be that. So I think on that basis, when we talk about women in politics from a global phenomenon, the compacts, etc., the experiences has to basically be based and characterized on where you come from, how do you identify yourself, and how do you move forward. And I think the young lady on the stage is an epitome of that.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Dr. Ditlare?
Thank you very much, Naledi. So, besides the recommendations that I highlighted earlier on, I just want to reiterate the importance of security in this 2026 local government elections. And this is beyond the IEC, I'm aware, but the collaboration of IEC and the security cluster, the intelligence will be very, very helpful. But like I said, I don't see an increase in the number of women based on some of the research that we have conducted. But also to say some of the recommendations may be short-term, Deputy Chair, others may be longer, because one of the recommendations could be the consideration of revising the law to have all the elections on the same day.
Okay.
Local government elections together with the national elections. There's also logistical advantage to that. And like I'm saying, these are some of the issues that may take longer for the IEC to implement. And of course, I'm available to support. But on the issues, lastly, women's movement has become very weak.
It's my time
in South Africa. We have lost the momentum as the women in South Africa. Looking at the number of women in parliament in South Africa, there's a weak women's caucus. They are very loyal to their political parties, more than they are to the common issues that affect women in society. So I would urge all of us, particularly women members of parliament, let's retrace the steps of the 1956 women, and build a strong women's movement, solidarity that would be able to address the issues that affect all women. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Outside of a Women's Month, my proposal is that given the diversity of women that are in this room today, I'm happy there are political parties represented as well. This is the time when, as we start preparing for local government elections, within our own parties as women that are here coming from political parties, can we identify women that have got potential in our platforms? And let's utilize each other to come and mentor those young people and give them the skills of how to make your voice heard where you find yourself. We have time to do that.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I cannot give you an opportunity. I'm under pressure. I'm receiving so many phone calls. I suspect it's the media people to say close, close, close. At this juncture, let me welcome Commissioner Judge Daya Pile to do the closing for us. Like I said, we are under so much pressure.
Yeah. Eh? Yeah, okay. Now we're on. Okay, so, you know, when you think about it, how did we get here? What is democracy? When did it start? And what makes it work? And there are a few things that make it work. But let me first remember two sets of women. The first is, I can't wipe out from my mind the images of mothers clinging to their babies as they die of malnutrition in Gaza, bones sticking out. And I don't know how any other human being who makes those calls for that eventuality can face the rest of us. The second recollection I want to have is that of Babita Deokaran. It is her month, and you would have seen news about her trending. People, women who speak truth to power, including the media, and we have a women's media person here, face some unprecedented acts of violence. So I salute those women. I mourn with them. I mourn with their families. But coming back to the question of how democracy started, if you think about it, there are at least 5 things that make democracy a democracy. Top of the list is we must agree, consensus. Absolutely about everything. Without it, you can't get anywhere, because we must agree to govern, we must agree to be governed. Related to that and to govern properly, we need information. Number 2, information. Information must be reliable, so no fake news. How do you make reliable, durable decisions without proper information? Thirdly, because we all can't speak at the same time and attend parliament at the same time, we need representatives. Fourthly, we need to collect taxes, not only for development, but also to pay the representatives. Now that got a bit out of hand, but nevertheless we got political funding law in place. But successful democracies, but also autocracies, survive because they are good bureaucracies. Bureaucracies, I mean people who just get the job done when it has to be done, irrespective of which president prevails, which party prevails. So those are the, 5 things I said at least. Are you threatening me? I'm not letting you do this. You took up my time. Okay.
We are under pressure.
I am too. I just want to round up by saying, of all the 5 things that make up democracy, there are a few other things. If we don't agree on our common vision of society, we are not having a democracy. Let's be clear about that. We agree that we must have safety. There are a number of things that people put on the table as essential. We must agree that there must be childcare facilities. That's indispensable. But we don't get there. Why? Unless there's a critical mass of agreement and notwithstanding our differences, you can forget about democracy. Now, that is a principle we apply in the IEC. We are rolling out, Tambifuti mentioned that we've been testing the ground, okay? We've done a lot of groundwork before we even think about implementing e-voting. We're coming to the end of that process of consulting, a process of trying to reach a critical mass of agreement in our organization, and every organization needs to do that. So, since I'm under pressure, I had a lot more to say. I will leave you with one message. When we as women govern, complete the sentence, because local government elections are coming. What are you going to do? Are you going to disagree continuously and fight everybody? Or are you going to reach across the aisle and say, this is the best interest of our society? And you don't have to look further. Go to the Constitution. You'll know what to do if you look at the Constitution. Do you put party politics first? Or do you put our aspirations as a society first? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge. And I apologize for all the speakers who went last, because truly and honestly, I was being unfair on you, but unfortunately, time is no longer on our side. I made a statement earlier that I have the easiest job in the room. I think I underestimated this. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for your participation. Particularly the panelists. I think you were awesome, as well as Commissioner with your opening key remarks. And Judge, thank you for the closing. I will not repeat anything. I just wanted to leave everyone with this quote. I had a lot to say in my closing remarks too. I prepared for this. But I just want to leave us with this quote that says, I am not free while any woman is unfree, even if her shackles are very different from my own. That was said by Audre Lorde. With that, thank you very much. From here on, we'll hear the announcements from the IEC team. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the sterling job you did. Perhaps let's... thank you very much for the sterling job you did. Let's give another round of applause. Indeed, I must say that she did a great job, and it wasn't easy, It wasn't easy at all. So this is what's going to happen now. We are going to invite the panelists to the stage to take a group picture. The rest of us will go and meet at the lawns, where we'll then take a group picture. Immediately after that, we'll tour this facility, and when we return from touring the facility, then you are invited, to lunch. But we're going to have it here. We'll dish up there and come here. I hope that is simple and straightforward. Okay, let's go enjoy the tour of the facility. Any questions? It shouldn't be more than 30 minutes. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the panelists.